Want awesome tabletop games delivered right to your door? Sign up now for Gamebox Monthly. Learn more at GameboxMonthly.com.
Yes, let's talk about it indeed. Welcome back to another installment of Elaborate. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I apologize for the late show and the hiatus from last week. I know we were dark. Apologize to anybody who was waiting, who was expecting a show. It was a shit week. If I'm being honest, it was a shit week. I was in and out of the pet hospital with my dear dog Cosmo, who you've heard me speak on this show about. He's had a rough go of it. He's a very old dog. Everything is okay for now. Shout out to the VSV, the veterinary specialists of the Valley over in, where is that? Woodland Hills. They are absolutely fantastic. Got us through the week. Everything is good for now. Cosmo's home. He's comfortable. He's not in pain, and that's what matters. Hopefully he's with us for as long as he can be. Man, it's hard watching pets get old. How great are pets? Pets are the freaking best, specifically dogs. Cats, they're fine. In any case, before we get on with the show this week, there's a couple things that I want to talk about. At this point, it's been a week since Hurricane Harvey has hit the coast of Texas. I lived in Pensacola during Hurricane Katrina. I was seeing somebody in Biloxi. I drove through Mississippi the days following Katrina, and I know firsthand just how horrible an experience like that is. At this point, over 30,000 people have been affected. My heart is with Texas right now. 51 have lost their lives. This is absolutely a horrific tragedy. And I really urge everybody, if it's possible, please donate. The Red Cross is a fantastic place for your money to go. They're going to do the most good. You can donate $10 to them just by texting Red Cross, all one word, to the number 90999. Once again, that's 90999, and you text the word Red Cross, one word, and $10 will come out of your phone bill. That's a fantastic way to do it. It's incredibly easy. Or if you're an Apple user, I believe the Red Cross has an app that you can just download, and you can donate directly through the app. Also, donations for something like this tend to kind of pour in immediately, directly when the disaster happens. But then they sort of peter off throughout this long recovery process, which could be very arduous and take a very long time. So please consider setting up a recurring donation over the next year or 2 or 3 or 10. If you listen to Dragon Wagon Radio, if you enjoy anything on the network, please, I urge you to donate even just once to the Red Cross for everybody affected by Hurricane Harvey. Our hearts go out to all of Texas, and we hope for as speedy a recovery as there can be after such a horrific tragedy. And on that note, we go from water to fire. I need to talk a little bit about the Latuna Canyon Burbank fires here in LA County. I live in Burbank, just underneath the Verdugo Mountains. And the fire that occurred this weekend was the largest wildfire in Los Angeles County history. And it's very close to home, not just literally because I'm right here, but also I feel like I owe my survival in LA to the Verdugo Mountains, specifically my emotional survival and well-being from the countless friends and partnerships that I've made on and in those mountains, to the inspiration, the escape, the refuge that they've given me. Living in LA could be sort of hard for me. Deep down, I feel like I'm sort of this mountain recluse. Like my perfect scenario is like the log cabin in the woods sort of thing. And so having these mountains right here, they've sort of been my home for the past 8 years. And my heart, it sinks way down into my stomach to hear that over 7,000 acres of it has been lost now. On Friday night, I could not sleep. It was the first night of the fire. Stayed up, and I was literally just watching the flames from my street as they stretched further and further southeast towards Montrose and Glendale. watching them crest peak after peak, all while seeing these groups of deer and coyote and other wildlife literally fleeing through suburbia away from the mountain. Ash is falling from the sky, just like really apocalyptic shit. Absolutely horrible. The cause currently under investigation. Come on, it was probably something to do with the drought plus the 110-degree weather we've had. But of course, global warming is a hoax perpetuated by the Chinese, so it's not like we have to worry about that. Oh, we're all going to die. With that said, the Los Angeles and Burbank fire departments, thank you so much. 1,061 firefighters in total. There were over 200 engines, 9 helicopters, all of that, 7,000 acres, and only 3 homes destroyed. Now, I know I'm saying only, and that's absolutely awful if you are one of those 3 homes. And my heart goes out to those people. But with that said, it is astounding, and it's a testament to the work of all those men and women that they were able to keep that number so low for such a giant fire. It's heartbreaking to look over the mountain and just to see black and gray and ash. I love this mountain. I look forward to the regrowth, the rebirth. Paul Bianchi, who, if you listen to this show, you're very familiar with, suggested something beautiful, and that is we should take a trip up there and plant some shit. I don't know how science works. I don't know if that soil is destroyed. I don't know if there's something that we can plant that will sustain. Ultimately, it is more of a sentimental thing to do, but I absolutely love that idea. So thank you once again to the Los Angeles and Burbank fire departments. I love you, Burbank. Burbank is my home. Burbank is home to Dragon Wagon Radio. So here's to the future. Here's to regrowth in Burbank. And so now let's do a show. What do you guys, you want to do a show? We should do a show. I have a fantastic guest this week. I haven't seen him in a long time. It's going to be fun kind of connecting with him. Also, I don't know him super well, so it's always great sitting down with somebody who I'm not incredibly already familiar with. He's a podcast host in his own right. He is an actor. He's a comedian, a father, and a Pearl Jam fan. I don't know if we're going to talk about that. He is a comic book nerd. Jeez, it's almost like we have some things in common. Sitting down today with the incredibly funny and dastardly handsome Eddie Pence. How's it going, Eddie?
Hey, how's it going?
Not too bad.
I waited.
You did. You waited.
You told me to wait.
You did a good job. Some people don't wait.
I didn't want to jump in on top of the music.
Because it's, you know what it is?
I listen. I'm a listener.
It's you explicitly told me beforehand you are not a listener. So that's fine. We can start with lies.
I mean, in general, as a human being, I'm a listener.
Oh, yeah. Like when you're in public.
Not specifically to your podcast.
No. Your ears are generally consuming sound waves.
I'm more of a listener than a...
Do ears consume? Is that the appropriate term
for that? I guess
that?
it's a way of absorbing sound waves.
Right?
I guess you would consume.
I'm not really a wordsmith.
Well, neither one of us are.
Right. Eddie, you're a comic.
Yeah.
You're an actor. You're what's the first thing? I always like to ask people.
I guess more of a, I mean, I work more as a comedian than I do an actor. I do act. I do acting. I do act. But I do acting.
You can tell that you're an actor because you say I do acting.
Yeah, I do acting. Yeah. I'm a filmmaker and stuff like that.
We met through it totally coincidentally that the consecutive 3 guests of the show were Mike Bridenstine, John LaQuasto, and now you, Eddie Pence.
But I don't have an album to promote like the last 2 guys.
You don't have an album to promote. We're gonna talk about why later. This whole thing is about why you aren't where you're supposed to be. That's what this whole thing is about.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, you didn't know that.
I wish I'd known that when I agreed to do it.
Yeah, no, but it's totally coincidentally that this was the kind of the 3 in a row, because we all did the Steel Chair Slamcast. Yeah, it was primarily you and Johnny, and then both Mike and I would come in every now and then.
Yeah, you guys would sometimes co-host, or
right.
Yeah.
And we are all like, you know, the from comedy who likes wrestling.
Yeah,
nerds.
which seems to be either a growing community or a lot of people are in the closet about it and came out about it. I don't know.
It is weird, and I think, you know what? I think or
a lot of people start just jumping on the bandwagon. That's what it is. That's what it is.
I think that once pro wrestling became a little bit more acceptable in pop culture, like, because I think we're at like a new renaissance of it. Like in the early 2000s, the Attitude Era, like everybody knew who Stone Cold was. Everybody. I think nowadays they're starting to be that again to a degree, and I think because of the spectacle and because of the presentation of it has changed so much that I think comics are starting to realize like, oh, I'm doing the exact same thing.
Yeah,
like it's literally the exact same. Especially when you have people like CM Punk doing, you know, doing like Marin's TV show, and you have like
there's so much crossover now.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the other too. Is a bunch of wrestlers are all of a sudden starting stand-up.
I mean, they're selling out comedy clubs.
Right. How do you feel about that? Real talk.
I'm not happy about it.
No.
I'm not. I mean, I'm glad those guys can work because it's what they do is a ridiculously hard job that has a short lifespan and it destroys your body mentally and physically.
Right.
So if you can turn it into a second career, I'm glad for you. But at the same time, comics
taking your stage
that have been
time.
busting their butt for decades don't get booked because these guys who just like, hey, I got some wrestling stories I'll tell will sell out a comedy club.
Right.
Whether or not they're that funny on stage.
It's more about going to see the guy you talk. And admittedly, I've been to a couple of those and I've enjoyed them. And then I've been in the back of the room going, you know what I would also like? For there to be a bunch of comics.
Yeah, exactly. But I when Piper was alive, I would sometimes I hosted shows that he did at the Improv.
Really?
And he was genuinely
he's
one of the nicest human beings you'd ever want to meet.
He was also funny. I mean,
he was funny. And he was a great storyteller.
Insanely charismatic.
Great storyteller.
So you met him a bunch of times.
Yeah, a couple times.
Wow. That's the guy who I've never met in that little in that universe that I always would have wished I'd met.
He was cool. Like I was doing a show. This was probably like 2010 maybe or whatever. And he was doing a show, and he was hosting. I was just doing a spot on it. He was hosting because like I found he was doing a show, and I called. I think Emily was the booker, or Eric or Emily was the booker at the time at the Improv. And I was like, I got to be. Please put me on the show.
This is the Improv in Melrose.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I go in, and you know how I guess now it's the lab, but there used to be like this little stage, and
the side room.
He was sitting back there. It was like his personal green room, and I just went back there, and he was just sitting there by himself, and I just went up and introduced myself, and like had like a 30-minute conversation. It was just the nicest.
Was it hard to not be like, and Tim, do you remember when you hit? You remember when you hit
45-minute fight scene and they live in the alley?
Yeah. That's actually really incredible. So, where was your crossover? Were you always a wrestling fan?
Always, yeah.
I'm like, you're like us.
I think my first live match, I went to the Cap Center in Landover, Maryland, and saw Hulk Hogan wrestle King Kong Bundy.
Wow,
this is like 84,
right? Yeah,
85, something like that.
So you must be slightly a bit older than I am.
Slightly.
Because I was just born in 84.
I'm a child of the 80s.
You're a child of the 80s. Yeah. Okay, so not by much. So wow, so you have your parents that took you in then when you were a kid?
Yeah, my dad.
Nice. Did he watch it and then he got you into it? Or was it like this thing he did for you?
I honestly don't know how it... He was never a wrestling fan because he's the type of guy I watch every time you have it on. He's like, this is fake. I'm like, yeah, I know, Dad. I know. You don't have to say it every time it's on. It's like, well, he watches, it's fake, but then he'll sit there and watch the whole thing.
Right, of course, yeah. Because
instead of get up and leave or change the channel. But yeah,
he would just take you to the...
I assume he's a closet wrestling fan because he took me to these things, but then would complain about it the whole time.
Of course.
But he never refused.
He never stopped taking you.
He never stopped.
Ultimately, he did have to buy the tickets and drive the car. Like, it's not...
He could have at any point go, we're not going. I'm not spending money on this.
By semblance of being a father, you are sort of in charge.
But yeah.
With that said, you have a son.
I do.
Does your son like wrestling because of you, or does he not like it because of you?
I was trying to, at an early age, he's 8 now, and like when he was around 4 in preschool, he was having some behavioral issues. Like he was doing a lot of like prison hugs on the kids, just like go behind them and just grab them.
Really?
And I think it was because we were playing WWE 12, I think at the time on PlayStation 3. And that's how I was trying to break him into wrestling that way.
Like video
games. And he was starting to like the wrestling part. And then I'd try to get him into the actual TV shows. And he would get so bored with the talking. He's like, I don't like the talking, Daddy.
Wow.
He just wanted the wrestling.
Wow.
And then
what a purist.
Yeah. Absolute purist at the age of 5. He was a purist.
What a smark.
He hated the talking. He just wanted to see the wrestling. And then he started having the behavioral issues. So my wife was like, I don't think he can watch wrestling anymore. So we had to pull the wrestling away.
Oh, okay. Right.
Just and then I haven't gotten him back into it yet. Even though he does, I guess some kids at school started calling him John Cena. I don't know why.
Really?
I think because he's like he's a super white guy, and there's a lot of Latino kids in school, and I think they just like picked him out. That's the white
John
guy.
Cena. Yeah,
we're gonna play wrestling at the playground. You're gonna be John Cena because you're the white guy. So he would come home like, I'm John Cena, Dad. I'm like, you don't even know what that means.
And then your heart broke.
Yeah,
you're like,
you're CM Punk. You're not John Cena.
That's hilarious. I know we're going to get a little over the place because I want to touch on a couple of these things again, but I do have to just mention it. I saw you posted a couple of videos of your son doing stand-up.
Yeah, I've taken him.
How did this come about?
He hasn't done it no,
I mean, I know, like you bring him to
one time about a year ago. I host this open mic every Monday night at the Pack Theater.
Oh, okay.
On Santa Monica. You should come down if you want to do 5 minutes.
So it was an open mic. Okay,
it's an open mic, and my co-host one night couldn't make it, so I just brought my son down and just let him co-host it with me. And there's only like 6 people there. That it was a late night anyway.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So, but he wanted to get up and do stand up because he had watched me before. I've been on the road, and whenever I can drive to road gigs, I'll take my family. because it's not expensive. And he'll sit in the back of the club and he'll watch my whole set. I mean, I don't. It's dirty. It's not. Well, it's not filthy, but it's not. I don't hold back.
Okay.
So he hears the words and stuff, but he doesn't repeat them.
Right.
And then after the show's over and the audience clears out, I let him go up on stage and he talks to the microphone. So he's kind of like
He likes just like
he likes
hearing his voice, and
he
like,
he likes the idea of jokes. And he's always asking me about jokes and why something's funny. So I have to explain joke structure to him and what like a misdirection is.
Okay.
And stuff like that.
Does he get to see the other comedians when you bring him to these things?
Sometimes, but he doesn't. He just wants to see Daddy perform. He doesn't really care about.
Well,
other
because the
people.
talking is boring.
Yeah,
right.
He doesn't care about the talking. But if Daddy's doing it, it's funny.
Gotcha. So did he do your material?
Yeah, he's done my material. He likes. I had
so
this one
cute.
joke about a Jedi, a Padawan, like dumb Jedi, and he turns his lightsaber on the wrong way and stabs himself.
Right. I think that was the one that I
Yeah,
saw.
that's
and
the
it's like
one.
a physical bit where he like
It's a
keels
physical bit.
over.
He's like, "How do you turn your lightsaber?" And then
Yeah.
he just stabs himself and falls over. And I would do that on stage, and that's like his favorite joke because he's big into Star Wars
because
too.
he gets it, and it's
He gets it, and it makes
silly.
sense in his head.
Right.
And so one day in class, he was doing a presentation about our family history. This was last year in second grade, and they asked Dad what he tells all the kids what his dad does. Says I'm a stand-up comedian, and one of the kids like, tell one of your daddy's jokes. So he just does the Jedi joke and with the fall and everything.
Right.
And all the kids go nuts.
Right.
And so basically, I just took that video of him doing that and a video of me actually performing that joke, and I spliced them together. I'm like, my son's a hack.
Yeah, he's stealing my material. That's really fantastic. So to rewind it, you said that your dad used to take you to see wrestling where?
I'm from Virginia.
From Virginia.
So I would always go, the Cap Center was like Landover, Maryland.
Was that Northern Virginia?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So not too far to DC.
No, it's like it's a suburb of DC, basically 20 minutes outside
Alexandria, is that sort of in that area?
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. That's where my girlfriend's from. She probably knows all the same places.
Basically, Fairfax is where I'm from.
Gotcha.
So.
And like typical suburban town kind of joint?
Just upper middle class white people.
Right.
That's all.
Lots of cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, a lot of cul-de-sacs. A lot of just take your bike out after school and come home before dark.
Right.
No one would worry about you.
You know what? I've heard multiple people say that, but I don't think that is a suburban thing. I think that's just a child of the 80s and 90s.
I think
thing.
it's a generational thing.
Yeah.
I just think I don't know what happened with us as kids growing up into adults now that we are overprotective of our children so much.
Yeah, it's because of the internet.
It's because
like we hear a lot more
it's
about
a 24-hour news cycle and the internet, and there's just so much
awful things.
You hear about all the awful stuff.
You don't get the news stories. Nobody says like a woman's son came home at 9:30 p.m. And told her about his day where he rode his bike all day and everything was fine. You don't get that story.
You don't ever. But I don't know if those incidents of horrible things have increased or we just now hear about them.
I think we hear about them more
because I think they were still there. We just didn't know about them.
Exactly. All the things that we had were sort of like wives' tales or urban legends of like, oh, you got to be careful because there's a man.
Like I don't know if there's more like kidnappings and pedophiles now than there were then.
I don't think so. And if so, we're to blame because that's our generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
like
is awful.
we did whatever happened, we created that. But
maybe we were told about the myths and then some kids just were like, well, I'm going to lean into it. I'm just going to become it.
Like,
if you can't beat them, join them.
These stories are famous. I'm going to be famous.
Are you that way with your kid?
Well, I mean, we live like right in Hollywood, so I can't be like, hey, I'll see you later. Go out there.
Yeah,
it is a little too dangerous.
True. Just particularly because of the environment, not even necessarily.
Like I've gotten to the point now where like if we're at a restaurant, he's like, I go to the bathroom, Daddy, and I'm like, all right, I'll let him go to the bathroom by himself.
Right.
He's 8, and I'll let him go.
Okay.
Instead of going there with him.
Right.
So that's been a big like, and you feel it as a parent. Like you didn't feel it, like you didn't think you'd be that protective, but like when you have your kid, you're like.
No,
once you have one, you're like, oh, it's hard to let that go. Even just going to the bathroom.
I often wonder because I'm an uncle times like 12 at this point.
Yeah.
Like all of my siblings have met, and I've got to watch a lot of different parenting styles, and and in my head, I'm like, oh no, I know now. I know what, but the reality is, I'm sure I have a kid. I'm just gonna be like, fuck, I don't know what.
You have no idea
it's
how
just,
you'll react.
I can end up being that parent who keeps his kid in a cage or some shit like that.
Exactly. Well, there's like the helicopter parent, which is terrible. The ones that just hover.
Yeah.
I try to be more of an invisible fence parent. Like,
okay,
I'm there and I'm gonna let it go up until the brink of a horrid incident, and then I'll jump in and stop it.
Right.
Like,
So what other inanimate objects do you compare parenting to?
There's invisible fence. There's leash, helicopter, cattle prod. No, but yeah, I guess I'm invisible fence.
Was your
parent.
dad? Was your parents were the hands off?
Way hands off.
Right.
Way like I was like a latchkey kid.
Okay.
Both parents worked.
Ditto.
I'd come home from school. I'd have the house to myself. Me and my brother have the house to ourselves.
Ditto.
From like 3 to.
Is your brother older or younger?
Younger, 2 years younger.
Nice. You guys were close growing up?
Super close.
Yeah.
Super far apart now. Super close back then.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I went opposite. Me and my brother, it could also be the age difference. We're 7 years apart.
See, I think that happens.
Right.
When you're far apart kids, I think you're like my wife, her sister's like 4 years younger, and they were not close when they were younger.
What are you
now
gonna
they're
do?
super tight.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you're kids, that gap is so much bigger.
Yes.
Yeah. Yet now, he's in his, early 40s. I'm in my mid 30s.
Yeah.
It's not that much
But
different.
you can relate
different
as human
life
beings.
experience.
You're
but
both
yeah,
adults.
Exactly.
Back then, like me and my brother were like 18, 20 months apart or something like that. So we were like,
So you were wrestling all the time.
we were best
and,
friends. We were wrestling all the time.
playing video games.
And now we're just,
Right.
there could not be two more different human beings on the planet.
That's how
than
I
me and my
feel.
brother.
Yeah. Are you? So he's not into the entertainment scene. Not into.
No,
the,
I mean he's back on the East Coast. He works for an elevator company. He was in the military. He's like ideologically, we're completely
Wow. This is literally me, and my brother. Yeah.
West Coast, left Coast.
Yep. Wow.
Right, East Coast.
Right wing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting. Were your parents conservative?
No, my parents grew up in
Right.
government. They both worked in the government. My dad worked at the Capitol. My mom
Oh shit.
worked at Department of Defense. My father-in-law was Secret Service.
Holy shit.
Like they're all from that area. They're all Democrats. They all grew up Democrats. I mean, very not super liberal, but not conservative.
yeah.
Like just
And in that part of Virginia, is that uncommon?
well, that part of Virginia is very military. There's a lot
Oh,
of military there, so it
gotcha.
is typically conservative.
Right.
But not. But now Virginia used to be a lot more conservative. Now I think it's got in a lot more. It's much more of a blue state now, just
Right,
because
yeah.
there's so many different people there, so many different types
Yeah.
of jobs, and
Which
it's very
is what
transit.
creates-
It's almost like LA. It's
Right.
very. No one is from there anymore. There's so many people that live there that aren't from there, so it's become a much more liberal
It's an
place.
import city.
Especially
yeah.
the northern part. Southern part's still very conservative, but the northern
Right.
part.
And Virginia's a weird state like that, where I feel like the north of Virginia is the north and the south of Virginia is the south.
Literally,
Like the line for quote the south runs through Virginia.
like I should
feel.
go for like in Alexandria, for Fairfax, where we're from. It's very northern. People talk like I talk. You go literally 30 minutes south, and there's a twang.
Right. Yeah, that's the line right there.
I mean, there's people talk like this. You know,
Right.
I mean, there's like a
I'm
twang.
from Virginia.
Yeah,
It's like, really? Because I'm from Virginia. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm from Virginia too.
yeah, we right down the street from you.
I saw you last week at the Walmart.
Yeah, but it's literally it's like that big of a divide that close.
Wow. And you said that your mom worked in the defense
Department of Defense.
Department of Defense. What was her title? What did she do?
She was like human resources type. She worked in hiring, firing.
Oh, gotcha.
people,
And
yeah.
your dad did what?
My dad was Capitol Police detective, Capitol Police
Wow.
force.
That must have been a pretty legit house to grow up in as far as like intelligence.
Yeah,
communication.
my dad worked. He was also personal security for Congressman at the time, Minority Whip Gephardt.
Okay.
So he did a lot of private security detail, and it was crazy.
Was he ever in law enforcement? Because I feel like that's a job that.
I mean, the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol has its own police force.
Oh, I get it. Okay, sorry.
It's got,
I'm an
that
idiot.
building has its own police staff. Like,
Got it. So he
so-
was military police essentially.
basically, I mean,
Right.
it's United States Capitol Police. You have to go to your own. They have their own training. They have their own police academy, and it's just it's its own.
Right.
Like DC Metropolitan Police have their own police force,
Right.
and then the Capitol has its own police force.
Was there a lot of pressure as a kid to like
No, but I think
hit
that's what
that-
drove me into the arts, is because my parents both grew up in government jobs. It was like 9 to 5.
right?
They worked 45, 50 hours a week.
Right.
I would only see them at night. I only saw my dad on the weekends
Oh
because
shit!
he would
wow.
work shift work. And so it was like I didn't
That's
want
what- that's
to
what my-
live that life.
Yeah, that's what my brother. So my brother's a police officer, and I always for the longest time he was doing night shift. So he'd wake up at 11 o'clock and go in at 7 or whatever it was. Wake
Yeah.
up at 11 in the afternoon. And it was just like the kids got to see him a little bit after school.
I never
but-
saw my dad during the week.
Wow.
Man. He would wake up at one point when he was like doing the plainclothes private detail for the congressman, still as a detective for the Capitol Police. He'd wake up at like 5, 6 in the morning. So I wouldn't see him before I went to school, and he wouldn't get home till like midnight,
Wow.
sometimes 1 o'clock, and then do that
And then
again,
do that again. Yeah.
all week long.
And remind me, you're the oldest of your two brothers,
Yeah.
right? You and your brother did you sort of like was the fact that you had your brother, was that a little bit easier? Do you think?
What do you
Not like seeing not having dad around as much because you had like your
It
partner in crime.
I mean, he was there on the weekends, so like
Right.
it's not too much you can get in trouble. We got in trouble a little bit. Snow
Right.
days, we'd be in big trouble
Right,
because
right,
both parents would be working, and we'd be home all day alone,
Right.
and shit would go down on snow
Right.
days.
Is there any? I mean, like clearly your dad, he busted his ass and he worked a lot. There's no resentment towards like the hours?
No, I don't think. I mean, he's got like he's got a really strong work ethic,
Right.
and he's just from that. He grew up on a farm,
Oh wow.
so he's got that work ethic, and he took
Right,
that
right.
into the police department. I don't think he's upset I went this way.
I'm sorry. I was going the opposite. I was going with you.
What?
Do you have? Is there any part of you that was ever like, shit, I wish my dad was around more when I was younger?
I'm a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, you kind of like I think I kind of overcompensate with my son
Right.
for that fact.
Oh, interesting.
You know, like I try to be around my kid as much as possible.
Right.
I know my dad wanted to be. He just worked.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing is, it's not like he was, he
He
literally
wasn't,
working.
He was like, he didn't choose. He was
Sure,
like,
sure.
I don't want to be around my kid. I want to work.
Right.
But so I try to be around my kid as much, and my job allows me that time to do that. So.
Right. Do you were there other characters in the cast? Did you have aunts and uncles who were around?
Yeah,
Did you
it's like my whole family lived like within a 3-mile square. Like I had aunts, cousins, my grandparents lived down the street. So
Right.
it was like every weekend it was just a house full of people. Every holiday was like a house full of people.
And I feel like that's so important. And it's something that's come up on the show so often when talking about parents who were either not there because of choice or not there because of work, is everybody seems to have like, oh, there was that aunt or there was that uncle.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh yeah, so I got a lot of who I am, not just from my parents. Like that's
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Like I've talking. Yeah,
I'm talking.
I told you I'm great with the words.
You're really a wordsmith.
It's a good thing I have
We
an
established
audio
that.
show where I speak into microphones. I've spoke on the show many times about the coven. Like I was raised by 6 women, essentially. Mom, sisters, aunts. When I say my parents, I'm never talking about my mom and
dad.
my father.
It's
Yeah.
like- yeah.
That's never what that word means to me,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is weird because most people assume when I say, oh, my parents, I'm like, oh, no. I think my parents. I'm thinking about my godfather, my godmother.
Yeah, it's your family.
Right.
Like I had my cousin who was like she would spend every weekend and all summers with us.
Right.
And she was almost like my sister.
Right.
So she's like 4 years older than me, but she was practically my sister.
Yeah.
But my cousin. And then my grandparents lived on the street. So if there was like someone was sick and had to be home, my grandmother would come and watch us while
Right.
our parents worked.
Yeah,
so it
yeah.
was like I always
There
had
was always people there that
always
were
people around.
Right, of course. Let me ask you this question. When did like you deciding to do stand up, or when, was this thing that as a kid you were like, oh no, I want to get in entertainment?
I think I always secretly wanted to be a stand-up comedian. Like ever
Yeah.
since I was a kid. Like I think the first time I saw a stand-up special, I want to say the one that I remember the most was Robin Williams live at the Met.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was 1986.
That's an interesting one for a kid. I don't hear a lot of people who say that when they were young, Robin Williams was their way in.
Really?
Yeah, especially our age.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It was. I mean, I was always a Robin Williams fan. Like
right.
Mork and
Movies
Mindy
and
and
TV,
Popeye
yeah.
was like my favorite movie as a kid.
It's so bad.
It's terrible.
It's so bad. I watched it recently.
I tried to show my
unwatchable.
kid. I tried to show it to my kid, and he liked some parts of it, but I had to fast forward through so much. I just get into the songs because I
Right.
know he would like that, but I could not watch the whole thing.
It's really bad.
It's so bad.
It's unfortunately bad because as a kid, or I mean, as an adult, you romanticize how good it was when you
I
were
saw
a
it
kid.
6 times in the I made my parents take me to that movie 6 times in the movie theater.
Jesus Christ.
That's how much I loved that movie.
And again, your dad probably a secret fan of it because he was like,
had to
we're
be.
going
Well,
there again.
There was times where like I would force them to go to the movies. My mom would take me to that, and my dad, I think we'd go see like Sharky's Machine, or he'd go see 9 to 5.
Right.
Like he'd go see whatever other movie
Whatever
was playing, whatever adult
simultaneously.
movie was playing at
Right.
the time. So it would be a lot of those. Like my dad would just go watch a movie by himself.
Right.
My mom would be forced to watch Popeye for.
He's
the
like,
6th
I'm not
time.
watching this shit. Yeah.
I think he saw it twice. And he's like, I can't.
Meanwhile, like how many times have you seen the Lego movie?
Countless,
Right? Yeah.
countless times.
But
But those are movies. Those are well made movies.
True,
now.
that's
and
true.
There's adult humor in there where you actually do laugh.
The gap is closing.
The gap is closed. So
There's not a lot of stuff that when we were kids, I could ever remember a parent caring about watching
so
whatsoever.
bad. Popeye was so bad.
So Robin Williams was her way in, and then
I mean that's the one.
Right.
That had like thinking back, that one had the most profound effect. I mean, I would always watch the HBO specials with my dad because he
Right.
would like to watch them, and my parents didn't like censor what I could watch or anything. Like they were fine with
yeah,
curse words and stuff, and I'm that way with my son
Yeah.
too. Like so, I remember watching like the HBO special, like the young comedians,
comedians.
Rodney Dangerfield,
Right.
where I saw Seinfeld and Sam Kinison for the first time,
Yep.
and so I was introduced to that, and like that was like 1985, and then I remember watching George Carlin, and I remember watching the George Carlin specials, and with my dad, and my dad was just dying laughing,
right, yeah.
and
A lot of it went over your head.
I didn't understand 80% of what George Carlin was talking about at the time, but
Of
I was
course.
laughing because he was laughing
Yeah.
so hard.
Did you go to college for something that wasn't?
No,
your-
I went to Virginia Tech.
Oh, okay.
And I studied communications because I was always interested in like TV and film.
Yeah, so many artists go to communications route.
and you do nothing with it. But I went like that's what I wanted to do. I
Sure.
took film classes, film theory
interesting.
classes,
I didn't know
TV
that.
classes with the communication because I guess the concentration you could do film and television, public relate. You could do all these different things. I took the
Right.
film and TV concentration, And, you know, you would learn the theories of TV and all that crap. And then I graduated and I decided to go to film school. And I went to film school.
Really? So wait, so really quick, put a pin in that. How far away from where you grew up is Virginia Tech?
About 3.5 hours.
Oh,
it's in the South.
So you were close.
It's in
then.
Southern
right.
Virginia.
But,
Yeah,
but you stayed on campus, but you were.
I drive home.
You still drove home to do
a
your
couple
laundry.
times a year. Yeah. Yeah, I would save it up for the month and I would drive home. And
Right. Well, that's not terrible. That's I like that's a good way to.
But then
do
I
college.
graduated Virginia Tech, and then I was like, I want to go to film school. So I came out. I went to Chapman in Orange County here.
Oh,
so that was
gotcha.
the big move when I was like 22. I moved across country.
Wow, and that was it. You've been out here ever since.
I've been out here ever since.
Shit,
20 years this month.
So when you're in film school for this, like I mean, like I said, I equate to you as a comedian before I equate to you as a filmmaker.
Well, I went to film school, and I learned in film school that I didn't want to be a filmmaker.
Oh,
because I went there and I was like, I like directing.
Right.
I like that stuff. I like writing. I like directing. I even like editing at some points.
yeah.
But I hate cinematography. I hate lighting. I hate sound.
Right.
I hate dealing with sound.
Right on.
Like it's
Well-
all that's the crew part of filmmaking.
Right.
I hate.
Were mom and dad into the film school idea?
They just wanted me to get a graduate degree.
Right. Okay. Right.
Like my dad didn't care. My mom just wanted me to get a graduate degree.
Sure.
And I'm like, all right, I'll get a graduate degree. I'll get one that's completely useless.
Sure. So also at this point, if you went to Virginia Tech, by the time you're graduating, your brother's already in school. What's
Yeah.
he studying?
He went to George Mason, which is in Northern Virginia, but he went ROTC, so he was in the
gotcha.
Army.
So he went military.
Then he
stuff.
did military. I don't know what he majored in.
Okay.
And then he did a tour in Kuwait
Gotcha.
during the second Iraq
Right.
war. He did one tour there and then got out. And
So stark comparison. So
night and day,
didn't matter what you were going to do, to be honest with you,
night and day.
because my other son's in the military.
Night and day.
Yeah, that I'm literally in the exact same boat. Like brother, military turned officer, like golden child. So I one side I've got my brother who's like super cop. He's RoboCop, you know, and then the other side, she was a former guest of the show. People who listened know about her. My sister Celia, who like New York State top-rated defense attorney on on Dateline NBC with major cases, incredibly successful. You know, that's what I'm living in between. There's no.
Oh man,
I have to.
Yeah, but you can fall into the crack and just live in obscurity.
That's my life. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I couldn't.
That's a blessing.
It was the only option I had.
That's a blessing.
It's the only option I had was to just be kind of humorous.
Just fall into the background and do your own thing.
He's the artsy one. You know. Yeah.
That's a blessing.
Right. So when did you start doing stand up then? Right out of film school?
When I was in film school, when I first moved out here, because it always been a secret thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And in Virginia at the time there was no comedy scene.
What is it like starting stand up in LA? I feel like that's
hard.
tough, man.
It was hard. There was no comedy scene at the time in Northern Virginia. Now there's a great little comedy scene, but it's 24 years ago there was nothing.
Right.
And so I moved out here. And I was like, I want to try stand up. And so I just started doing it. I took a class because I didn't know what else to do.
Right, yeah.
So I took a class and that kind of got me into I started doing open mics and then I just started I kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And it's harder, I think, out here.
Oh, I
wish I had known from the get-go as soon as I graduated, I want to be a comedian and just focused on that and done that and not done the film school thing.
Yeah,
and not moved right to LA. I should have gone to like New York or Boston or Seattle or Chicago.
Yes, a smaller city there. That is still a big city, but
but there's a comedy community there, and it's not an entertainment focused city.
And that's the thing. I try to explain that to friends who aren't comics who ask me about like because I've been on this existential hiatus now for quite a while as a comic. And it's not a thing that I planned on. It's not like a thing I was like, I'm done concentrating on this. It just sort of happened. And I admittedly, Mike Bridenstine talked to me about this after we had recorded the episode, so the listeners didn't hear him yelling at me about how like it's all in my head. Do you know what I mean? And I totally can understand that. And it's probably an emotional thing. It's probably like where I was moving out here for, like emotionally for a while. But like from Long Island where I started to Tampa, Florida, which is by no means a great icon of comedy, but at least there's a community feeling. It's a comedy community. When I moved out to LA here, I noticed like there is no comedy community.
There's not. There's cliques.
There's cliques and they're awful and nobody wants to see their friends succeed. I remember loving when my friend got booked on something because there's usually a chance I can get on that show and I'd love to see them. And now in LA, it's always that. Well, that's hyper competitive, and I feel like there's not. Yeah, it's not. There's no family. There's no LA comedy family.
I mean, you'll have your friends, and you kind of have it that way, a support group that way. But it's not like that's one of the reasons I like going on the road because when you do go on the road, you kind of see the comedy community in that town because
Right.
you're headlining or featuring, and then those comics come there to watch the show.
Sure.
Because that's where they do their open mic once a week.
Of
And so
course.
you kind of get a sense, and especially if you're a repeat performer in those cities, you really start to get to see the community a little bit. You're like,
course.
oh, this is a nice little community you guys have here.
Right. Yeah. Here's a question for you. You're out here. You're doing stand up post college. How soon before you have your son?
Oh, I didn't have. I moved out here in '97. Started doing stand up '98. Got married in 2004. Had my kid in 2009. So it was
wow.
like,
So you're a 10-year veteran before you had your kid.
yeah. I'd done a lot. Like
Right.
most of my success in stand up had happened before I had the
Right.
kid. Like
Right.
I had,
And you done a premium blend or no? What,
I did live at Gotham.
live at Gotham. I'm sorry. Right.
I did Montreal
Right.
a couple times. I did a late show. Like I had all my success as a comedian before I had my kid, and then
Right.
it was weird. Like I didn't stop.
And now you probably have
performing.
better material because you've got a
I
kid.
do.
Yeah, because you have a kid.
My act is so much more honest. It's a
Right.
much better act than it
Sure.
was then. Like I had this thought the other day about when I was watching something and it reminded me of Montreal, and I remember doing my Montreal set in 2004, and I was like, how did I get Montreal? Like how did I get into that festival with that set that I did?
Right. Yeah.
Because it was just a bunch of lame observations and superficial jokes, and now my set is personal and real, and it's all like true experiences
Sure.
that ring true that I think affect people more.
Right.
But for some reason, like I was a much more successful comedian when I was doing the other thing.
With that said, when you have your kid, especially with the aforementioned like parents who were at work all the time, like you can't be a road comic and that. Well, you can, but do you?
Rarely.
I guess that's the question.
I go on the road a few
Really?
times a year.
Oh, okay,
Not
so
a lot.
So you're not, and is that because of the son?
Yeah, I pulled back from the road a lot after I had
Right.
because I didn't want to be away.
Right. Yeah.
I could have made it work because my wife is a realtor, so she sort of has a flexible schedule too. So I
Right.
could have made it work where I'm going on the road a lot more, but I wanted to be home.
Right. Yeah. Because like you said earlier, like maybe you're leaning into the opposite of how. Your
Yeah,
dad,
I kind of wanted to be. I wanted to be around that as much as I could because
Right.
it's so fleeting, and you realize that like he's 8 and it feels like yesterday,
Right.
and it goes by so fast.
Is there anything in your parenting of him, especially as a comic? Because I feel like as a comic, you're so much more analytical of yourself. You're so much more introspective.
Yeah.
Do you see things that are your father or mother in you and the way that you're parenting your son? I'm always interested in that divide.
That's an interesting question. I try to not take things so seriously with him. Like I
Okay.
try to always show him and I don't think I got a lot of that from my parents. My parents weren't serious people, but they didn't have like great senses of humor. They
Right.
weren't like joking around with me all the time. Like
Right.
my parents didn't really make me laugh a whole lot.
Right.
You know, like they were great parents.
Right. Yeah.
That gave me a great childhood, but I wouldn't look back and go, my God, they were such
They were a laugh riot. Yeah.
I just laugh. I remember just sitting around the living room laughing with them all the time. Like that
Right.
didn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
But they were great parents. But like, I think I try to go the other way with that with my son. Like I try to make my son laugh as much as I can every day.
right.
And he makes me laugh in turn.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so it's like I try to instill that into our household more, like a
Right.
lot more of joking around.
Right, it's a lightheartedness.
And when bad things or serious things do happen, I try not to like do the overreact and just sort of like, hey, this is life. This will happen.
Right.
So it's
interesting. So it's slightly opposite.
It's not polar opposite, but
Right.
it leans in the other direction.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And are your parents still around?
Yeah.
Yeah. And grandma and grandpa are.
No more grandma and grandpa.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I meant as.
Oh, their grandpa. Yeah.
Yeah,
My grandpa and grandpa gone. But,
Yeah, gotcha.
they live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina now.
Oh, really?
They retired even more south.
But hey, that's not a bad spot to go visit.
No,
to have
it's
a
fun to
spot-
visit.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a fun place he loves going down there. So.
yeah. And in there, you said that they weren't like super like funny folks. I've found that like modern old people are really funny. I don't know. Do you have that experience with your parents? I've just found like I think people.
My dad's unintentionally funny.
Oh, that's sometimes way better.
Like way unintentionally funny. Like he would always yell at me for ever being on my phone, like on Facebook or whatever.
Yeah,
Whenever
yeah.
I'm around, I'm just like flipping through my phone. He's like, "What are you on that thing?" And I guess my second cousin, just about 6 months ago, created a Facebook page for him, and we were just there in June visiting. And he will just get on my
Yeah.
cousin's iPad, and he'll sit there. I'm like, "Dad, what are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, I'm just on this Facebook thing." I'm like, "Oh." And then like 3 hours later, I'll come back and he's still sitting there on it. I'm like, "Dad, what are you doing? And he'll look up like, what time is it? And I'm like, it's 3 hours. You've been on that for 3 hours. Like, oh, God damn it. Like he fell into the wormhole.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not doing that again.
Yeah,
and then he'll set the thing down. And the next
20
night,
minutes later,
he's sitting there and he's sharing my posts. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Have your parents ever come see you stand up?
Yeah, I've actually performed. There's a comedy club in Myrtle Beach.
That's nice.
I headlined there a couple years ago. I'm headlining there this January. So
nice.
My mom apologizes a lot. Like,
wait, what?
She saw this was like 3 years ago. I headlined there, and she brought a bunch of people. She has a part-time job at Kohl's.
Okay,
it's like a department store, so she had a bunch of people come and watch. And I'm like, I warned her ahead. I'm like, Mom, I don't think you want people to like. I'm not a filthy comic, but I do touch on some subjects where some people could.
And you're not going to hold back.
I'm not going to hold back.
Right.
And so I did it, and then like on the way out, she's like standing next to me as like the people are walking out the door, and like they're all shaking her hand or shaking my hand. She's like, I don't know where he gets those words from.
Right,
Like
yeah.
just apologizing to every single person that's walking out of the comedy club on behalf of her son who just performed. It was just
my favorite thing. My mother. So my feature film, when we had our like Long Island screening last month. My mom obviously is in attendance. She came down from upstate, and like other family members are there. And my mom was so incapable of separating the fiction.
Yeah.
And like my mother just, you could hear her in the back. That's not how that happened. Like in the middle of a screen. Just like, that's not, and you could, if there's a photo of like my grandfather that I use like as a set piece, you hear her leaning over like, that's my father.
Yeah.
Like really loud. I'm like, oh, God damn it, Mom.
they can't separate. They can't.
Yeah. It's really difficult.
And the same thing with stand-up. They're like, they'll sit in the back and they're just like, I could see him in the back of the room when I'm up there. My dad's laughing.
Right.
Because he's just enjoying himself. My mom's just like,
but that's also, it's a testament to what you said earlier. Like they might not have been funny people, but they appreciated comedy. If your dad was laughing
no, my dad's always loved comedy.
Right.
He loves watching comedies.
He likes taking it in.
Like Ace Ventura is like, he.
Really?
Yes. Unbelievably, yes. I don't know why. But Pet Detective.
That's his jam?
He dies laughing at Pet Detective. I have no idea why.
Was he big on like what's his name? Like the airplane and
not really. Some of those he's just like, this is stupid.
Really?
But for some reason, Ace Ventura just tickles him. I don't know why. I don't know why.
For some reason, Ace Ventura tickles him. That's gonna be the quote.
Because most comedies, he'll sit there, he'll laugh at like Carlin and stuff or stand up comedy. But like for a lot of comedies, if it gets too much out of the realm of realism,
right? Yeah,
it gets a little too like absurd. He's like, this is stupid.
Right? Yeah.
But like Pet Detective.
Pet Detective is his jam.
He can suspend all disbelief for Pet Detective. I don't know why.
I wonder, like, is it a thing for Jim Carrey?
Maybe. I don't know.
I wonder if he sees a cable guy and he's like, nah, it needs more pets in it.
Like, this isn't wacky enough.
I love that that's his bar. I hope that he compares every movie to Pet Detective. He leaves like hard dramas like, yeah, you know what's good, but there should have been a side view mirror joke in there somewhere.
He should have been driving with his head out the window. I don't really understand.
I love that.
Yeah, it was weird.
So, I mean, when you started doing stand-up then, and you're like, hey, I got this film degree.
They've always been supportive.
I feel like it's one of those things where as long as your brother's putting his life on the line for our country.
Yeah, as long as he's taking care of things. But like they've always been supportive of anything I've wanted to do. And even to this day, even though I'm not super successful at what I'm doing, they're still very supportive. I mean, they worry.
Right.
Because I do have a wife and a kid now.
Right,
so they're like, so how is this gonna what are you gonna do when you retire? Like,
what's your long-term plan?
Like,
I'm in my long-term plan.
I'm living my retirement.
Right.
But you know, you work in this business, you work until you can't move anymore.
Right.
So
how do you, with that said, like with that sort of worry that your parents put on you, this is a conversation that I feel like a lot of artists struggle with, is my family's the same way. Like my sister-in-law specifically is the biggest worry rat about my life more than anybody, more than like actual blood siblings.
Because they have that structure in their head. Like you have a 9-to-5 job you work until you're 55 or 60.
Right.
And then you retire, and then you live off those savings, and then you die.
Right.
And that's the way life is.
Those are the chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with that said, how do you deal with it internally, or how do you vocalize it maybe to other people about that sort of like, oh, well, I do have a kid and a family now, and like you live a risky lifestyle.
Yeah. I wake up some nights in panic attacks. I'm just like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Right.
But at the same time, it's like life, you don't really know what's around the corner.
Sure.
Good or bad.
Right.
Like I have... there's people I went to high school with that are dead now.
Right.
They died from heart attacks and cancer and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's like, you don't know how long you're going to live.
Sure.
So try to enjoy it.
Right.
Be responsible enough to like take care of who you have to take care of. But at the same time, you have to kind of enjoy it. And you don't have to, life wasn't meant to be lived in these chapters that were set up in the
Of course, yeah.
1940s or 50s
Right,
or
yeah.
whenever they were set up.
With that said, have you ever faltered from that? Have you ever?
There's
like,
been
you know
times
what,
where
I'm
I've started scrolling through want ads and jobs and
Right.
like, okay, but then at this point, like I'm 20 years into this.
done. Right. Yeah.
I don't have an extensive. My resume says comedy clubs on it, and
Right,
then
for 20
MFA
years.
in film school.
For 20 years.
So
Employ yourself.
I can't sit down at a job interview and go, hey, check out YouTube.
Right. I'm here to sell insurance to you.
I mean, this is what I do. I'm on this path, so I have to make this work.
That's great. And your wife is incredibly supportive.
Yeah, unbelievably supportive.
Couldn't do it without her.
No, I mean, she has panic attacks too.
Right.
She freaks out. Like, what are we gonna do? But it's at the end of the day, she
Right.
is all on board with
Right.
everything.
Yeah, there's a level of bravery in that I feel like is commendable. It's something that I struggle with. Do you ever do that thing where people tell you like, "Oh, I don't know how you do it. Like it's so what you're doing is
all
so
the
great."
time.
And then you look at them and you go like, "Yeah, no, it's awful. Like I wish that I was doing what you're doing because you're
I wish I could fit my brain into whatever
Yeah.
I can't. I can't.
right."
I couldn't imagine doing like a normal job for 40 years.
It's kind of mind-boggling.
But I admire the people who do it because I'm
Right.
like, what my dad did, the sacrifices he made, and what he did with his life. I mean, like I couldn't,
Especially
do that.
like you said, like the hours that he had
The
to put
crazy
in.
hour. My mom did the same thing. I'm just like, they worked until, and they still work. They just have that work ethic. Like my mom.
Oh, really?
My mom has a job at, like I said, at Kohl's because she retired in 2004 from the Department of Defense, and she's moved to Myrtle Beach and got a job
Didn't want to sit down
because she just can't sit still.
right.
She has to be
And
working.
I think that's actually kind of smart, to be honest with you.
It keeps
Like,
you alive.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's, she's flexing her brain. She's in public. She's meeting people. And
Yeah.
I bet you she's making friends at work. That kind of thing. Where
She'll pick up extra shifts because she can't stand to just sit around the house and do nothing.
Right. What about
Whereas my dad will just sit in his recliner all day. So he was forced to get a job just to get him out of the house.
Gotcha. Mom made him do that?
Yeah, he worked at
That's
a golf
hilarious.
course. He
Oh,
drive-
hey, come
Yeah.
on. There's got to be some perks to that.
free golf.
Yeah, right? Come on now.
But it gets him out of the house.
yeah. of
Otherwise, he
course.
wouldn't leave the house.
Oh,
He would
gotcha.
watch cooking shows all day on his recliner.
Yeah, and be on Facebook.
Yeah, now on Facebook. So
With your film degree, what do you expect to do anything else in film?
I've tried to get a couple. At one point, I was a low point when we needed money. I tried to get a job at the LA Film School.
Oh,
I
interesting.
emailed like, hey, I'm a graduate. But the thing is, my film degree is from 1998, 99.
Obsolete.
It's a completely different. I shot my thesis film on 16 millimeter film.
Right.
You don't do that anymore.
Right. You still have a passion for movies, though?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Does your son have that? Do you give that to your son? You said when you showed him.
It's weird because I'm always like, I love watching movies over and over again
Yeah.
because you always see something different every time you see
Sure.
a movie. Every time you watch a movie, you'll see something new.
Right.
Even if you watch Popeye again, you'll
Right.
see something new
Yeah,
in Popeye.
My girlfriend and I just binged all of the Wet Hot series.
Yeah.
Wet Hot American Summer is like one of my favorite dumb movies.
Yeah, it's great.
And obviously the 10 Years Later just came out.
Yeah.
So we were like, oh, let's watch the movie. Let's watch the First Day of Camp series and then watch the new series all in rapid succession. We were sitting home with my ill dog and we're like, oh, that's a great thing to do today, And in Wet Hot American Summer, there's one scene where all of the nerd kids disperse through all these different places, and Jeannie Garofalo and David Hyde Pierce are left there. And I've never noticed the one kid who runs back to the woods, and you can see him for like a minute and a half after he leaves, still running with his arms flailing. And it's to that point. I must have seen that movie 100 times.
Yeah.
I've never noticed
But you
that.
always find something new in a movie.
God, it's so funny.
And so I've done that with my wife isn't a big movie fan. She'll
Right.
watch TV. She'll watch garbage TV for hours.
right.
Bachelor in Paradise, like garbage TV for hours.
Yeah.
My son,
Reality shows.
I've got my son into movies. He likes stuff like Despicable Me and the Minions movie.
Sure.
But it's what he does.
Yeah, that's fine.
And Lego Movie and stuff. But I got him to look into movies as like there's every shot is intentional. Everything in that shot is planned.
Nice.
And every time you watch a movie, you're going to see something different. So
Right.
he's been like, he has it on his iPad and he'll watch. He did this the other day. He came running. He's like, he watched the Minions movie.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever saw the Minions movie.
I haven't seen that one yet.
It's
no.
the prequel
I've seen
to
all
how
the
the
yeah.
Minions
yeah.
came about. The Minions are looking for their new evil master. This is before Gru
Sure.
grows up. This is like in the 60s or whatever. And they go to this like evil villain convention to find the new person. And they're walking around the convention. It's like any other convention. There's like booths with like
Yeah.
different technologies like the freeze ray and stuff. And so they're just walking to the convention. And in the background, you see little kid Gru with his mom. And he's looking at the freeze ray in the freeze ray booth.
Nah,
You
little
would
Easter
totally
egg.
bow your head.
Little Easter egg.
Little Easter egg. And he's like watching. And he freezes. He's like, Daddy, that's Gru. And that's the freeze ray. That's how he gets the freeze ray later for Despicable Me, the movie.
That's awesome.
Like he pieces that together.
Yeah.
I'm like, see, buddy, there's always something new you see in a movie if you
Nice.
just keep watching. And he's been doing that with every single movie. He'll pause it and like look over the whole frame.
Oh, if he's a Star Wars fan, he probably got a kick of the prequels, all the little things.
I showed him
that were
the
in
ETs
the
and
ETs
Phantom Menace, and that blew his mind.
The Millennium Falcon and whatever 3 or whatever, which one that one is in. But
because we were going to Universal Studios and we parked in the ET parking lot, and he's like, and the bicycle's flying. He's like, does ET fly? And I'm like, well, there's actually a rumor that ET might be a Jedi, so he can levitate.
Yeah,
and I'm like, he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And like, they're actually ETs in Star Wars, and so I went home, showed him the Phantom Menace, and
nice.
The ET's like, see, so the ET and ET is actually could be a Jedi,
which is also weird because in ET he plays a little Yoda toy.
Yeah,
so he's like, hey, I know this guy.
So that's the master.
Is there anything that you've shown him that just has fallen flat? I know you previously mentioned Popeye, but because this always amazes me with what doesn't work. I've had this conversation with a couple of guests.
Like you show something like you loved, and they're just like,
and it just dies.
What was it? Oh yeah, what was it? There was something I showed that he just was not into. It was a Charlie Brown special that I loved when I was a kid.
Really, like a Great Pumpkin kind of thing?
You know, he loves the Great Pumpkin. This was like I think it was like the river rafting one. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's like this 2-hour movie. No, it's the one where they go to Paris.
Oh shit!
They go to like there's a Charlie Brown has a what do you call it, a pen pal in Paris, and they go there to visit. And I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, and I loved it. And and upon viewing it again, I'm like, this is the most boring Charlie Brown.
Okay, so you at least admitted though that it wasn't bad, as well.
Like, yeah.
Like so,
and then he watched it. And he's like, Daddy, I don't really like this. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, I don't like this either, buddy.
All right. So then, furthermore, is there anything that you watch that you do still love that he was just like, nah, I'm not into it, not feeling it?
What am I trying? No, I don't know, because I showed him Animaniacs. He loves Animaniacs.
Nice.
I showed him Tiny Toons. He loves Tiny Toons.
Nice.
He seems to like Muppets. I guess Muppets.
Oh, really?
I still find the Muppets funny.
Yeah.
He's not so big in the Muppets.
No? Just wasn't into it?
Just doesn't, I don't know why. He likes Animal, but other than that, nothing really.
Recently, my nieces, I have 3 young nieces, all varying ages, and it was finally, they were all sort of old enough we could start having like family movie nights, you know? And so we started, I think the first thing I showed them was they'd never seen Back to the Future. So I was like, let's watch Back to the Future. And they loved it. And so it became that like, oh, well, what else can Uncle Jake? Because my brother and sister-in-law, I love them to death, but they're like, you know, not the most cultured people.
Yeah.
Like you know, their kids watch freaking YouTube. It drives me crazy. You know what I mean? So
does my kid.
Oh, it's tough. It's tough. So so after that, they're like, oh, what else you got? So I showed them all sorts of stuff. Short Circuit, which they loved. And also, by the way, that movie holds up so
really?
well.
I watched that again.
So funny. Short Circuit's so funny still.
Even with the guy playing the Indian guy.
Well, that's number 2.
In brown face.
Yeah, that's number 2.
Well, it was number 2. That's right.
Yeah,
he wasn't in number 1. He was in number 1, wasn't he?
Yeah, maybe he was, but it wasn't as...
He was a side character where he was the main character in number 2.
Yeah.
But Steve Guttenberg wasn't in number 2.
No. They loved Goonies. They loved all these movies. And then the 2 ones that really fell flat, one was my fault because I spoke about this before, was when we were a kid, a lot of these movies we watched, they were on TV.
Yeah.
And they're edited for television.
Yeah.
You don't really remember that because you just remember loving it as a kid, and then as a grown-up, you love it.
Yeah.
I showed them Blues Brothers, forgetting just how, like, just the F-bombs, and also, like, they couldn't care about the music. Like, there's so many long...
Fucking teeth.
Yeah, or just the, you know... Fucking Illinois Nazis, that shit.
I fucking hate Illinois Nazis.
But also just like they didn't care about the big music numbers I thought they would. It was just really boring to them.
I knew Charles Napier, the guy from the Good Old Boys.
Yeah,
band.
absolutely.
The no fucking teeth.
Right, yeah.
I met him I was doing a corporate gig up in Bakersfield. He lived up there. This was 2007. And we became friends, and he would drunk dial me in the middle of the night, hammered, because he was kind of an alcoholic. And
I like how you whispered it so that nobody heard you.
Alcoholic, don't tell anybody. But he was the nicest freaking guy in the world.
Right.
And he would call me just talk to me about the business and about the old days, and it was amazing. Just,
wow.
I wouldn't even talk; I just listened.
Right, of course.
And I did a little short thing called Tuck Johnson, adult film star or something. It was like a spoof. It was like sort of a Spinal Tap meets Boogie Nights sort of thing.
Okay.
And he did a part in it for me.
Nice.
And he was the nicest guy. And I got talking to him, like, when I first met him, like, I'm a huge fan, from Murdoch and Rambo to
right.
the Good Old Boys band. And he's like, I guess he threw that fucking line in. No fucking teeth.
Really?
They wanted to make Blues Brothers with no cussing.
Wait, what?
They wanted it to be PG, and he wouldn't do that line without the. He's like, no, this has to have it.
So did that tip the whole movie? Because there's so much bad language.
It did.
Really?
From the story he told me.
Right.
I'm getting his story, so
Sure.
I don't. But from his story, he's like, he would not do the line without no fucking teeth. He was like, he would not just do no teeth. He's like, no fucking
It's gotta
teeth.
have the F word.
So he would not do a take without the F word in it.
That's incredible. I want because that movie that was the
apparently it swayed the whole movie.
Right, because I forgot just how how many F-bombs had the language and the content of that movie.
But apparently that's because of Charles Napier.
Oh wow, I need to look that up.
So,
that's a little fact of Blues Brothers knowledge I would like.
But he passed away, but he was a good guy.
Another movie that I showed them that I was really unfortunate with the fact that, and they say afterwards that they liked it, but the entire thing was met to like no reactions and just like they didn't like it. They liked it because they wanted to like it because Uncle Jake likes it. Was Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
Oh, I haven't seen that in forever.
And it still holds up to me. You know what I mean? Like I thoroughly enjoyed rewatching it again.
Did you know they all have equal screen time? That was the deal. Like
No.
Mickey Mouse and Bugs Bunny. All those characters had to have equal amounts of screen time. That's because that's the only way they got those studios to agree to put their properties in the film.
Wow.
They all have equal screen time.
I didn't know that. And it's funny that you said that because I was giving them all the factoids as the movie was happening,
really?
you know, because I'm the annoying uncle who does it. Well, only because they seem so disinterested. I wouldn't do that. I don't just do that for every movie. I'm not that guy that's like, so the way that they shot this was, I'm not that guy. But it was
I'll fill in all the quiet moments right now.
But yeah, it fell on deaf ears. They just didn't. And I have a theory behind that, and that is that I don't think that film noir as a style is just anything anymore. So I think when we were kids,
it's a little. I mean, it was almost dated at that point.
Yeah, but when we were kids, we still had stuff like Dick Tracy. Like we still kind of
and there was like the Dead Men Only Wear Plaid. There was still comedies being made about the film noir era.
I think that they just didn't understand the style
that's
at
gone.
all whatsoever.
Yeah, that's gone now.
So it totally fell on deaf ears. They were just like, what? They didn't get it at all. They just didn't care. It wasn't funny to them.
Interesting.
Yeah, I love giving annoying tidbits to did you do that to your son? Are you ever that who's just, you're just like, oh, and then he's like, Dad, shut up.
Yeah. Well, no, he's more interested in it. He'll start talking and he'll start doing it to me. Like, I'll take him to a movie and he'll start talking to me because he'll notice things in the frame. He's like, hey, Dad, I'm like, buddy, you gotta be quiet in the movie theater.
Oh, he's in the theater.
We're in the movie theater. You gotta be quiet. Because I've taken him to see Despicable Me 3, I think 2 or 3 times in the theater.
Gotcha.
Because I enjoy the movie experience and I've gotten him to love the movie experience. My wife hates it.
Really?
She hates sitting in a dark room for 2 hours, but she can't go to the bathroom when she wants.
Wow.
Well, my son loves the movie experience now, so he still treats it like he's in his living room.
Yeah, he's still learning about the etiquette.
Yeah.
And at 8, he's on that breaking point now. Yeah. My fucking niece who just turned 8 or 10 or 9, I don't know, I'm the worst uncle. I just want them all to stop growing.
I know. I know the feeling.
Her dream, because it came out on her birthday, was to see the Emoji Movie with everybody. That movie was so bad
I've heard it's awful.
It was so bad that even the kids didn't find it funny. Like literally,
my kid wanted to go, and I'm like, I heard such bad stuff. I'm like, I don't even want to take him.
Right? You were like,
I took him to Despicable Me 3 again. Instead of going to the Emoji Movie.
Perfect.
Because I knew he liked that, and I was like,
we were trying to go. That was the option, and I was like, don't you really want to go see the new Minions? Because we were like, let's see that one. Blah blah blah. Man, so it's my niece. We saw it at like noon on a weekend, like packed theater full of kids, and complete silence through all the jokes. I mean, it was that bad. But ultimately, too, it's interesting that you say that about like that your wife doesn't enjoy the theater experience and stuff like that. I've struggled with connecting with stuff with my brother. Like you talked about, like when you're further apart in age, it's kind of harder to find that common ground. And he's so like hard nosed cop. You know what I mean? Like man's man, like doesn't, like he just doesn't care. He also doesn't have time to like enjoy media. Yeah. It's a random movie, but it was one of my favorite experiences because I really felt this sort of connection with my brother. Was we took the kids to go see the Jungle Book, the newer Jungle Book movie.
I haven't seen it.
Okay, you're almost at a loss for not seeing it in a theater. I don't know that it's going to be as good on a screen.
Yeah,
that movie in a theater was a fucking spectacle. It was incredible. The CG, everything was incredible. And I remember in that moment, my brother, who usually is just like arms crossed, like couldn't care less. I remember him like really big eyes, and every now and then he would lean over. He'd sit next to me. He'd go like, "That's not real." Like talking about,
really?
Yeah, talking about like the river water. He'd be like, "Yo, those rocks aren't real."
Only that boy is real.
Like, yeah, and I'd be like, yeah. And then after the movie, I remember like he was like, "Dude, so how did they do?" And I remember showing him like the behind the scenes of John Favreau with this fake bear and then this blue container of water and how they made that scene. And I remember in that moment feeling like, oh, my just piqued my brother's interest in filmmaking. Like it happened in that theater at that experience. And it was like kind of emotional for me because, he came and saw my movie, like my short a couple years back, and he was like, oh, it's cool. But, I could tell he's just...
You just need more CGI in your stuff.
More CGI. But...
Just tell him, show him the baseball one, go, all these baseball players, no one's there. It's all CGI.
It's all CGI.
Really?
That's not even me. Yeah, I wasn't in this movie. Yeah. But yeah, no, I feel like the movie going experience with the family is really crucial. And I think that it's, like you said, it's getting better because the kid shit is becoming funnier for adults. They're closing that
They're
gap.
closing the gap with the humor.
And it did happen when we were younger. It's just that I don't think it was marketed as much to the adults.
No, I agree.
I mean, not for nothing, but like, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the 91 one.
Yeah.
That movie it's ridiculous. It's about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it has like really good storytelling merit. It's really beautiful at times. There's some really beautiful moments in it. Like, that movie is fully entertaining for an adult who doesn't know anything about Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, yeah. But they would never go.
Because it was marketed as this cartoon return movie.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I feel like marketing has changed. Like, they're showing stuff.
Well, yeah. I think they realized that these kids' movies, the adults have to go.
Yeah.
So in order to make it even bearable, and to generate more money,
get them interested.
Because you'll get adults with their kids, and then you'll just get adults going.
It's incredible how many reactions like the trailers get for these kids' movies. And like, I remember when I can't remember what it was in front of. Shit, maybe it was Star Wars. It might have been one of the new Star Wars movies. But when the Zootopia trailer, where they just showed like the scene of the sloth talking, like in a theater at midnight,
people are laughing at that.
At midnight for Star Wars, is the packed crowd? They're all laughing.
And speaking of like Zootopia, just like the cultural undertones in that movie,
I actually haven't seen it yet.
Oh my god,
like, it's really good.
I hadn't seen it in the theater. My son started watching it on Netflix, and I sat there and I watched. I'm like, this is about racism.
Some good lessons.
It's crazy.
Good.
The cultural lessons that you can learn watching Zootopia.
Wow.
But like, watch it. It's not the movie you thought it was.
I gotta watch it
at all.
We were a little bit all over, but this was so fun, man. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out.
Man.
I mean, let's tout some shit. Obviously, where can people find your stand-up dates when they're?
You can go eddiepence.com, which I never update, but you can go there.
Do you have a calendar on there? Is it easier just to go to your Twitter?
Just go to my Twitter or my Facebook or my Instagram,
and it's just at Eddie Pence.
All of them are at Eddie Pence.
Lucky.
Yeah, I know.
You got it. I
got in early.
You got your name,
but at Eddie Pence, and then on Twitter, Instagram, I usually post dates and stuff.
I'd be remiss if we didn't mention that you were doing your own podcast for a while, wrestling podcast as well
with Johnny.
And not to put you on the hot seat here. Any interest in? You think we're going to be coming back to the podcast world anytime soon?
I'd like to. I do a little internet radio show on LA Talk Radio every Tuesday night.
Oh, nice.
It's not really a podcast, but I would like to get more back into the podcasting world.
So at Eddie Pence, all across the world. As usual, find me on Twitter at Liquid Jake. Please follow the show at Elaborate Pod on Twitter, Instagram, all that fun stuff. And as always, for all things Dragon Wagon Radio, please follow at It's Dragon Wagon. If you're listening to us on iTunes, even if you're not listening to us on iTunes, go on iTunes, please. Leave a review. We're currently a 5-star podcast. That's really fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Let's keep reviews coming in. It's going to help people find the show organically. Speaking of which, if you enjoy a conversation that you tuned into for somebody you know, hey, listen to a couple episodes of some people you didn't know.
Yeah,
you
like
might
this
find
one, because you probably have no idea who I am.
maybe not. Share these with people that you think might enjoy them. We're still, we're about 6 months in now. I can't believe that. About half a year in. We're still learning. We're growing, but we're growing together, and that's what matters. As always, I am Jake Lloyd. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Eddie, thank you for popping by.
Thanks for having me.
I love you.
Love you too, buddy.
You guys, you don't get it. I'm sitting here. He's just so handsome. He's got this face and this beard, and his name is Matt Kessler. Matt, you have a podcast.
I do have a podcast. It is called Too Many Records. It is an extension of a YouTube show that existed already called Too Many Records. And it's because I have a lot of freaking records.
What's a lot of records?
I have about 1,500 vinyl LPs, and it's growing by the day.
That's a lot of records.
Yeah, so on the show, I talk about records. I nerd out about music with people. And it's a real good time, so I hope you'll listen if you like tunes.
How do we listen?
You go to iTunes or Stitcher, and you can download it there, or go to toomanyrecords.net.
I have an old Hall & Oates record I'd like to sell you.
Nope.
It's Dragon Wagon.